Welcome to Karma's Harvest. Today we explore a story of a stolen legacy and a bitter taste of reality. We've all heard that honesty is the best policy, but for some, the shortcut to fame is far too tempting to resist. This is the story of how a secret ingredient turned a moment of triumph into a public reckoning. In the small town of Willow Creek, the Miller family was known for one thing: their heavenly velvet stew. It wasn't just food, it was a century of history simmered in a pot. The recipe was kept in a leather-bound journal, passed down from grandmother Evelyn to Sarah, the eldest granddaughter. Sarah treated the kitchen like a sanctuary, cooking with a quiet reverence for the past. However, her cousin Chloe saw the kitchen differently. To Chloe, the recipe wasn't a heritage, it was a meal ticket. Chloe was ambitious, the kind of person who measured her worth in social media followers and the envy of others. She had always resented Sarah for being the chosen one to guard the family secrets. One humid July evening, during the annual family reunion, the journal went missing. Sarah was devastated, searching every corner of the house, but Chloe was already halfway to the city, the leather book tucked firmly in her designer handbag. 3 months later, Sarah turned on the television to see a familiar face. There was Chloe, dressed in a pristine white chef's coat, standing on the glittering stage of The Culinary Titan, a national cooking competition. The grand prize was $100,000 and a head chef position at a Michelin star restaurant. Throughout the season, Chloe cruised through the rounds. She called her style modern heritage, but Sarah knew better. She recognized the specific way. The onions were caramelized and the exact ratio of spices. Chloe was winning on the back of a woman who wasn't there to defend her work. The finale arrived. The challenge? The dish that defines you. Chloe, with a confident smirk, announced she would be making her signature velvet stew. As the camera zoomed in, she moved with practiced grace, replicating the steps Sarah had performed 1,000 times. But there was one problem. The last page of Grandmother Evelyn's journal was slightly torn, the handwriting faded by time and a spilled drop of oil. The secret ingredient was listed simply as the nut of the great earth. Grandmother Evelyn always used a very specific, rare variety of wild macadamia, harvested from a small grove behind the old farmhouse. Sarah knew this nut was the soul of the dish, providing a rich, buttery finish that balanced the spices. Chloe, desperate to complete the masterpiece, did her research. She found the rare nut and had it flown in specially for the finale. What Chloe had forgotten, or perhaps never bothered to learn in her childhood, was why she was never allowed in the kitchen when Grandmother Evelyn cooked. As the final whistle blew, the judges approached. Chloe's dish looked magnificent. The aroma filled the studio. The head judge, a world-renowned critic, took a bite and closed his eyes. "Exquisite," he whispered. "The depth of flavor is unlike anything I've tasted. Chloe, you've captured something truly ancient here." The crowd erupted. Chloe was declared the winner. The confetti fell and the host handed her the trophy. "Now, Chloe," the host said, "as is our tradition, the winner must share a celebratory bite with the judges." Chloe hesitated. Since she was a toddler, she had a severe, life-threatening allergy to certain tree nuts. But in her mind, she had convinced herself that the nut of the great earth was just a fancy name for a chestnut or something harmless she'd used before. In her greed and haste, she hadn't tested the ingredient herself. She didn't want to admit she didn't know her own signature dish. Under the glare of the studio lights and the gaze of millions of viewers, Chloe took a large, triumphant spoonful of the stew. The reaction was almost instantaneous. Within seconds, her face began to flush a deep, angry red. Her throat tightened, her breath becoming a raspy whistle. The trophy slipped from her hands, clattering loudly on the floor. The celebration turned to chaos. Medics rushed onto the set as Chloe collapsed, clutching her throat, the very dish she stole acting as a poison to her body. As she was wheeled out on a stretcher, the truth began to unravel. The medical team identified the allergen, and Sarah, watching from home, finally called the producers. She didn't call for revenge. She called to provide the full medical history that the doctors desperately needed to save Chloe's life. When the investigation followed, it was discovered that Chloe had no records of developing this recipe. The stolen journal was found in her dressing room. The title was stripped, the prize money revoked, and Chloe was banned from the culinary world for life. She had sought the harvest of a garden she did not plant. She tried to swallow a legacy that didn't belong to her, only to find that some secrets are kept for a reason. Sarah eventually opened a small, humble cafe. She didn't need the bright lights or the trophies. She had the satisfaction of knowing that the heavenly velvet stew was still being served, with love, by hands that were clean. In the end, karma doesn't just give you what you deserve. It makes you taste the consequences of your own choices. Thank you for joining us at Karma's Harvest. Remember, the seeds you sow today are the only crop you can truly call your own. Until next time.